So I want to welcome Michael TWIGG to the TORVUS podcast. He is on the Dane's Dungeon hot seat right now, and he has apparently 2 active campaigns of Dungeons and Dragons going on. So welcome, Mike. And actually, we'll just start off. What editions are you playing for D&D right now?
Right now, both of them are 5e.
Oh,
I started back in AD&D back in elementary and junior high, and then I had a big hiatus, and then about 3 years ago I picked up 5e. So I've been playing that because it's really approachable. I have a lot of people that's like the campaign that I'm running right now. That's my regular weekly one is just getting close to 3 years, and a bunch of those players were brand new to the game, and 5e is just super approachable. So we started with that, and it was a big learning curve for me because I hadn't played it in about 10 years, and I think I watched every YouTube video about Dungeons and Dragons 5e in about 2 weeks to try and get myself up to speed. They've gotten more socially conscious. There's still demons, there's still devils. The demons and devils actually fight each other. Okay. They introduced a class that's an Oathbreaker Paladin, which means you can play an evil knight, essentially. And you can play an evil character. So there is actually, there's quite a bit of that. So
yeah, or you're thinking of 2nd edition.
Oh, is that what I'm thinking?
That was a post-Christian craze thing?
Oh.
Yeah, post Satanic Panic.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't even really talk about that earlier, but that is a big aspect to Dungeons and Dragons, was all that satanic stuff that was going around. I always thought it was a joke, but I didn't know it was actually like really frowned upon.
It was very serious. When I first started, I found a copy of the Monster Manual in like a church library book sale.
What?
Yeah, in a church library book sale in Invermere, BC on Visitors Appreciation Day, and I used my allowance to go and buy it, and I showed my mom, and she had a right proper fit about it, and was like, "You're gonna worship the devil! You're gonna kill yourself about this! People have murdered people over this." And I didn't understand what she was talking about at the time, because it was essentially a picture book with monsters in it for me at the time, but she was not having it. She was a proper Christian.
Which monster manual was it?
It was I think it was the first, not the add-on, but the original monster manual from AD&D. I actually before I got back into that's amazing.
So that's very interesting, because you got yours at a Christian store, whereas this very monster manual right here, some overzealous Christian camp counselors tried to take it from me, telling me that I was going to burn in hell, but they did not take it from my dead hands.
Yeah, Satanic Panic was a real thing.
It was a real thing.
There was a movie, what was it called? Like
Mazes and Monsters?
Yeah, Mazes, and Tom Hanks was in it, and that really kicked things off for a big way, because Tom Hanks goes like nuts in the movie and doesn't know what he's doing, almost jumps off a building, and so every mother and father in the world freaked out.
That came out in I'm going to say 82 or 83, but there's before that in 1979 there was a guy by the name of James Eckert III, and he went missing, and they were trying to search for him, and they blamed D&D for his disappearance, and they thought that he was taken by satanic cults and all these things like that. 2 weeks later he was found. He just ended up running away. But what happened is all that negative press actually pushed D&D, and sales.
That's what made it big.
Yeah.
Really?
Apparently, because TSR, I think, owned them at that point. And I guess, Gary Gygax had to go on TV and be like, no, it's all just in your mind. It's fan. But it like skyrocketed their sales, which it's kind of funny.
It was like heavy metal and stuff. It was like we were all going to burn in hell and stuff. And
so the crazy thing is that I mean, originally, I mean, TSR owned D&D, and then it was sold to the Wizards of the Coast. They've had different investors, and Wizards of the Coast got bought out by Hasbro. So Hasbro actually owns Dungeons and Dragons now.
Yeah.
So it has gone through all these different publishers and bankruptcies. So we talked about it on the podcast earlier. It's crazy, but you're doing your campaign via Zoom. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I've got two right now. The original campaign that I started, that's been running for almost 3 years now. We usually get together and we play once a week, but that obviously wasn't an option, starting 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So reluctantly, because I don't really like doing the Zoom thing for D&D. It's a very social thing for me. I like getting the friends over. We have some beers, we have some appies, and then we roll some dice like nerds. So reluctantly, I started playing over Zoom, and then I have a lot of American friends because I go down to Burning Man every year, and we're actually starting a nerd theme camp down there. But since Burning Man's not running this year and everybody's locked down there, a lot of my friends in the camp were of different nerd genres, but they had all heard of D&D and knew that I played a lot of it. And they were like, well, would you do one over the internet? And I was like, sure, why not? And they said, they were totally game for it. So I set it up, and I've been playing a newbies game. I think they're in their 11th or 12th session, and we based it on the new Wild Mount campaign because I'm a huge Critical Role nerd. So, if you guys know what that is.
It's one of the online things there. What do you use, a virtual tabletop? How do you do things? Like what do you use when you're doing it for Zoom?
I use Zoom, and then I have an auxiliary camera that I'll point at like the dungeon, and then all my players have their player sheets on a digital app on D&D Beyond.
Okay.
So, and then I can see their stuff.
They are able to edit it and then upload it, and then you have access to it, or how does that?
Yeah. That's exactly it. And that way I can, when I'm planning out plot arcs and monsters and all that stuff, I can go in and look at what their weaknesses on their characters and kind of exploit those a little bit. And then for newbies that are playing, I can go in there and be like, yeah, you want to consider this, you want to look at this, so you didn't put this kind of in the right spot, you might want to consider adding a few points of strength or whatever, and that sort of thing. So I can
be able to do you ever mute people to discuss secret information? Does the technology help you in any way, or has it just been something that you've kind of had to overcome and adapt?
It does. I would say there are certain aspects of it, because I do like being able to hide things. Like I can hide my rolls or hide my sheets and that sort of stuff. And I message people, like independent players on Facebook, to be like, you hear a voice in your head. He says, I'll give you whatever you want if you give me the vampire blood, and stuff like that, and try and get the bad guy to coax them in and whatnot. So that's been nice. So I don't have to pull them aside after the game and be like, say this all in the corner of somebody's kitchen. But I do miss the social aspect of it.
Right.
We actually talked about that. We said that D&D and role playing allowed geeks and nerds to get together and actually be social, and that was one of the huge benefits of when role playing came out, because all these people technically were outcasts in all these social groups, but then they had this. There is a huge social thing to it. It's awesome. Yeah. So one of the questions we had in our podcast, and I'm going to ask you, is what size of your campaign, how many players do you like to have around a table? What's too much for you?
8 would be my absolute maximum. I like to stay around 5 or 6, because otherwise you get because it's all turn-based, you get into combat, and if you've got 9-10 people, that's a lot of time to go around in a circle, and everybody makes a decision on what they're going to be doing to this red dragon, and it's hard to keep flow and keep the intensity up. So you want to kind of limit it. And then there's a lot less, infighting and talking and that sort of thing. So
also hard to design the campaign and adjust it properly for the because you want to have one creature that doesn't just wipe them all out, but also doesn't just get taken out in one round of player turns, right? So each player is like a huge advantage to a party. So you kind of scale it then, and it just makes it less crazy when it's not 15 people.
Yeah. And 8 people, even 8 level 5 characters can take on some pretty epic level monsters. So it makes the battle a little bit less significant. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you've got 5 people that are struggling to stay alive amidst this onslaught of dragons or whatever it is, then it's much more significant.
So Mike, the technology's obviously changed because you're doing campaigns in Zoom. Like when I started D&D, obviously the internet didn't even exist. So would you say that role-playing is more, it is more accessible, but is it as popular, do you think, as it was? Has it gone down? Is it more? What do you think?
Oh, I think it's way more popular now.
Okay.
So, I would say that because it's more approachable. I think the technology has made it more approachable. So when I started, when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, you sat down with your DM, you guys, and maybe your other players, and you opened up the player's handbook and you opened up the dungeon manual. And you had to go through these 2 books that were 200 plus pages to make your character. And that was like 4 hours. That was like 2 hours. Now I can go on an app on the internet and I can bust out a 5th level fighter that's going to just slay in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And it does a lot of the math for you. And that way, you don't have to double check your player's math. I know that if they go to whatever website, that their math is going to be more than likely correct. And I'm not going to be like, yeah, well, you're not going to do 30 points of damage with that short sword right off the bat. That's just not going to be the way it is. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't have to break that to them because the machine just won't let them do it.
Right.
So, and I think it's made it a lot more accessible. I also think the fact that the kids like myself that did it for a long time and then maybe had to go to university and took a break or started careers and took a break from it, we now have financial assets to pour into stuff that we like. So so it's just there's more funding for the products. Like Wizards of the Coast is seeing more funding coming in. Like I pre-ordered books. There was no pre-ordering books back in the day. I have for no reason at all, and nobody needs them, I have semi-precious stone dice just because I can have them.
Love
it. For no reason. They just look cool. And it's just like, it's a cool pastime. So there's all these, late 20, early 30, late 30-year-olds, that are playing this game and they have money to spend on it. It's a fun hobby.
So Ari had shown me a site where it had custom screens, DMing screens. What level of customization or sort of creativity do you bring to your games? Like what would we expect if it was a typical night at Twigg's house and we're walking in there? What kind of setting? You said you like to do appies and drinks and stuff, so there's obviously that social aspect. But in terms of your actual creativity as a dungeon master, where do you go with that?
So I do a lot of my stuff digitally. So I do. I like to use a player's app so they can make their characters online, and then I can keep track of them. And then when I do my campaign writing and all my planning for the game to come, I do all that on a Google Drive, because occasionally, this great mind wave hits me and I'm standing on a ladder on a job site and I'm like, oh, that'd be great, that lich will have that spell, and I can just put it under my phone so I can access it anywhere. But I like whenever they come to a really intense battle or something that I know might kill a few of them, I like to hand make dioramas essentially for my dungeons. So as a good example, the crew that I usually run, they're level 11, and they went into a pseudo kind of Vietnam style country that was being plagued by a green dragon, and I made this green dragon's den. And you can they get in there and you describe the big scene. There's green mist crawling across the floor. You hear this purring in the corner, and then I can just be like, roll initiative, and then I go into the back room. I grab this diorama that I've made and I put it down on the table. I'm like, okay, where are you guys? And then I try to kill them.
Nice. How do you make it?
I use a lot of insulation, like rigid insulation foam, and I spend a lot of my money at Mike.
Do you have one of those hot cutter things, or you just?
I do not, but that is on my list of things to get right after I pay off my semi-precious stone dice.
You don't have the meteorite dice or the dinosaur bone ones yet, then?
I do not. I have.
You have not gone to that level.
I have Adventurian.
For adventurers, nice.
Yeah, I don't, and I have some really big D20s that'll go to Burning Man with me for the camp.
The great thing, I mean, about that question of Alex, that was a fantastic question, but I kind of remember when I was playing, so 1991, when this particular role-playing game came out, Vampire the Masquerade.
Oh yeah, that's a gooder.
Absolutely, my favorite role-playing game, even more than D&D. And I know this book inside and out. I mean, it's super weathered, but I was always big into music. I was always big into candles, to ambiance. Music is a huge and a great mood enhancer in any type of thing. And back then, we didn't have MP3s. I literally just had to take like the CD or the tape to cassette.
Wow!
Right. But I mean, I'm pretty sure, Mike, that you probably use music in your campaigns at some point, or have it in the background. Am I correct or no?
Yeah, it's why I got on a Windows-based laptop, so that I can, because on my Google Chrome, I can't put music in the background when we do our Zoom calls, but I can on a Windows-based platform. So I have playlists made up on my YouTube profile. So I have, stuff from like Skyrim and I have a bunch of playlists from John Wick.
Really?
Fantastic. Yeah. When they
ever heard of John Wick, Alex? Ever heard of that?
Once or twice, yeah.
Yeah, when they get into an intense battle and somebody's getting close to death, like, dial it up with a little EDM and a little Matrix, a little John Wick. It's
awesome. Very cool.
I never even thought of putting music in the back of that until the podcast type D&D came out, because my only experience with seeing somebody else play when I was a kid was one of our friends' dads. He ran a game with some of his buddies, and they go into the man cave or whatever, and they play D&D for a while. And we begged him to run a campaign for us, and that was the only time I ever saw anybody else run a game. Every time we played, it was like extrapolating out of the books how it worked. And then when I got back into it this time, I watched a bunch of the podcasts, and I was like, oh, music. Why haven't I been doing that?
Totally. And it's amazing what you remember from campaigns. Like if you've been running a campaign for several years, you can literally you'll remember seminal moments in there. It's like, oh, I remember when this character died, or they met this devil, and like it comes back to you like you were watching Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So after COVID gets lifted and you can start getting back together with people, are you going to do that, or are you going to continue to run it digitally? How are you going to do it?
I'll have to run it digitally with my Burning Man group. They took a lot more to it than I thought they would.
Yeah.
So they're right into it, and they're playing in Wild Mountain in the Critical Role universe. So I'm totally into that. But for the local game here, I'll go back to doing it at the house. Hopefully, I'm hoping.
So you'll have 1-in-1. You'll get both worlds.
Yeah, I get both worlds.
That's so, good. Mike, 2 questions for you. The first one I'm going to throw at you is, What do you think of this game here?
I have never played it. I've heard really good things.
Okay. So
yeah, there's
Palladium is great. So Alex, have you played it ever?
I've never even heard of it. What is it?
Think of Pathfinder. It's essentially the same. It's a kind of it's very good. So this was introduced by my friend Dan Adair. So we used to play Vampire together, and they're like, "Well, we have a Palladium role-playing universe that we're going to do. Do you want to do it?" And so I bought the books. It's just kind of an offshoot of a D&D thing, but it's great.
Have you ever heard of Rifts? It's the fantasy version of Rifts.
Yes.
Oh,
okay. Yeah.
That's the same group of people.
Yeah. So that's a very cool game. There is a lot of different things. I'm a purist when it comes to that fantasy. I do like the D&D. However, there's another book, and Jason actually bought me this book because I've been looking for it for the last 20 years. And he got it online finally. It's very rare. And this was also a very cool role-playing game that I'm about to show you. It's also probably one of the darkest games out there. Cult. So reading this book is like, I don't even know how to describe how dark this is and kind of the background, but basically it's a modern setting. And the real basic thing behind this is God gets fed up and decides to take a break and just leave the universe. So the devil goes, what am I supposed to do if I don't have God around? So the devil has to actually jump into the shoes of what God would typically do. And all this, like these angels and these demons start coming down to earth because it's total chaos. There's no order and chaos anymore. It's essentially just chaos. So this is a very dark, but very sweet ass game to play. Kind of got this Cthulhu thing going on as well. So Cult, amazing. So Jason, thank you for this.
I can totally see how you would go from Vampire to that.
Oh, yeah.
That's a natural progression or degression, whatever.
Yeah. Another question for you, Mike, is in D&D, one of the big things is magic, any type of magic item. What is your favorite magic item that you just love to throw at players or use? Is it a weapon? Is it a ring, a wand? What is it? What do you love?
Oh, that's a good question. Portable hole.
Yeah.
Portable hole.
Classic.
Portable hole. So you guys all know what that is?
What happens if you take a bag of holding and throw it into a portable hole?
Everyone dies. Everyone dies.
Nice.
So, Matt Colville does talk about DMing and stuff, and he made this reference where a lot of DMs, they're like really withholding with magic goods, and like if a player's looking for something, they'll put them in some far-flung place. And he's like, well, it's a fantasy universe. You know, you're spending 4 hours a week or whatever doing this. Why wouldn't you give your players, reasonable access to these things they want to do? Because they're going to do creative shit with it, which is why we're all at the table anyway for these weird one-off moments where somebody puts a portable hole in a bag of holding and everybody dies. And you're like, well, we'll roll up some new characters. So I had players. I said, okay, you guys have your eyes on certain items. Give me a list of 12 items you'd really like. I'll put them on a list. And when you guys get to somewhere reasonable that these things might exist, I'll roll a D12 on a few of your sheets and we'll see what's there. And one of them had a portable hole on it, and they found it. I forget where it was exactly, but they've done some crazy ass shit with it. So one of the rules is you can survive in a portable hole. If you hop in a portable hole, you're good in there for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, you go into the suffocation rules. They have stretched that to the nth degree because they weren't high enough that they all had like flying or teleportation, and there wasn't a lot of teleportation circles. So they would, when they did like incursions into castles and whatnot, everybody would just hop in the portable hole, fold up into the rogue's pocket, sneak in because he's ultra sneaky, and then everybody would burst out. And then worst case scenario, somebody had to roll like, a strength check of something like that, which they have a paladin in the mix there. But right now there's like They killed a dragon. They've been running like encounter after encounter after encounter. So they've got like 20,000 gold in there, the better portion of a dead dragon, 2 zombies, a paladin, and just a disgusting mix inside this portable hole. And they're like, can we use it to, sneak into this other keep? I'm like, no, it is full. It's full and disgusting. They come up with really crazy ways of using this hole. And we've had a lot of physics debates. I don't know if they constitute physics debates because it's all in a fantasy universe.
Yeah,
theoretical physics.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how much damage, like if we threw it over the wall and we were all in it, how much damage could a portable hole take before, it gets destroyed? What happens to us if the portable hole gets destroyed? Like, I don't know. I'll go on Reddit and somebody's talked about this somewhere. I don't know.
So that will lead to another question I have for you is, what are some of your pet peeves as a DM? Like, what can a player do to you where you're just like, oh man, I can't believe I have to deal with this or come up with this? Or how do you have any? Have you come across that scenario yet? Or
oh yeah, absolutely pet peeves. So one of the first players that I started playing with, my good friend who is he finished his doctorate in creative writing here, and he's a crazy smart guy. But he's the guy that goes into a video game and finds the most efficient way to finish it. Like he'll go into Doom and he will finish the whole thing in one night, but he'll figure out the loopholes in the game. So he is a rules lawyer, and he's very well read. He read the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the majority of the Monsters Manual, in a weekend, just so he could quote things to me, and he knew. And then I was like, okay, we're gonna get this game together, and he decided I'm gonna play. I was still a little new to 5e, so I said, yeah, you can play any race you want. He said, I want to play an Aarakocra monk, so he can fly and he can dodge basically anything almost right off the bat.
Wow.
So he liked to argue things. So I would say, no, for the purposes of this doesn't work, or give me a roll. Or he wanted to, jump off a falling rock or something like that, Matrix style. And so for his rules lawyering, we put down the 1 rebuttal rule, where if he doesn't agree with a call I've made, he has 1 rebuttal. He gets to make 1 argument to convince me, and then that's it. And then we had to drop it. Otherwise, it just wouldn't stop.
You never get to play again. Yeah,
no, it would always be his turn, and arguing doesn't bring the positive vibe to the table that you really want, right? So for him, we had to put that down.
So the pet peeve is, I guess, the rules lawyers, those that claim to know better than the DM at the rules, or trying to exploit rules to get a certain thing.
Exploiting loopholes in the system, which there are many. There are many. That would be a big one. Yeah, rules lawyering, arguing with the DM, being late. Scheduling people to play a game. Like if we've had a game scheduled for, Monday at 1:00, and then all of a sudden, I've got some sort of bullshit excuse. Life comes up, and in reality, it's just a game, which is fine, but you gotta show up. I put down a rule that if you're not there to play your character, then you don't get any experience.
Yeah,
and that was not super well received, but I think it created the incentive that I wanted.
Right.
Well, I'm falling behind the rest of the group.
Show up.
Stuff comes up. That's fine.
What happens when you don't show up to work? Right? Do they still pay you?
You don't get paid. You don't get paid. So
we used to after our campaigns, especially Vampire. I'll use this as an example. So I used to play with a group of guys: Callan, Jeff, Eli, Misty, and then later Dan and Joe and Stacy. But after we would play, we'd do these marathon sessions when I was probably about 20, 21. We do like 6, 7, 8 hours of just playing straight. And then at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, we would all leave my house and go down to Denny's, which was 24 hours, and have our Grand Slam breakfast with our pancakes. And we would talk about the campaign like we had just watched a movie, and we'd go through it. And it was a neat sidebar to the actual experience of playing role playing, of just getting together and talking about what just occurred. Do you guys ever do that? Do you ever have like afterwards, it's like, oh man, I can't believe this happened, or the players talk about it?
I don't get invited to those things.
You should.
I'm like, it does happen. They have their own chat where they try and scheme against whatever my plot is. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they do. They were going into a battle where I put them. They had done something kind of stupid, and they were being tracked by an army, and they knew they couldn't win this fight. And I put down the rule. I was like, okay, if you can slow this army down for 6 rounds, the villagers get away safe, right? This army's coming to this village, is going to destroy the village. They're total Nazis. They're going to destroy the village. You slow them down for 6 rounds, they get away. And they met up at Krista, my wife's office, in the boardroom one day, middle of the week, and got out on the dry erase, the whiteboards, and they planned out exactly how they were going to do this.
That's awesome.
Yeah. This was like a year and a half ago, and they just sent me the pictures of the whiteboard, and I was like, yeah, that was a good plan. Of course, it went totally to shit, but
it's a good plan.
I was super flattered that they would do this. They met on like a Wednesday at 5 o'clock after work in the boardroom, and they sat down, they discussed everybody, like what they were going to do, and then how they were going to disappear into the forest. And so, yeah, there's those things after the game and before the game, like, talking about what levels you're going to take. Like, I know from my point of view, my thinking about my campaign doesn't really stop. Like, when I get bored in a meeting when we're estimating stuff, I'll be like, oh yeah, what should that lich do? It's kind of a nice way to like float away from the world as it is right now.
Well, it's like it's a form of expression, right? You're creating your own story, and you're like, I got to DM. I think I only did 3 sessions before the group just like kind of fell apart, but it was just really interesting to go through the process of creating a story, because it's a ton of work.
It can be, yeah.
It's a lot to even initially sort of wrap your head around and start figuring out the rules and how the game works, but then to make it interesting and engaging to those players. And also, everybody could be there for a different reason, whether they're there specifically for that combat tabletop aspect, that chess style of game, where they're more focused on the combat, or they're entirely focused on the role playing, or I don't know, you just press ganged them in there and you have beer, so they showed up, right? Like, it's a total range of people in the party sometimes, and it's really, I found it quite a challenge to keep everybody engaged, but also write this fantasy story. And I don't know, it was a great way that I like to spend my time, kind of just expressing myself and being creative, and keeping the story and the players relevant in my process.
Yeah.
And some people like to DM more than play, and vice versa. We talked about that as well, and just everyone gravitates to something. And if you look at trying to convince someone or try to explain role playing or Dungeons or Dragons to someone who doesn't know it or play it, it's like, what do you mean, Monopoly? I mean, that, and then it's like, oh God, where do I even start? But think about all the benefits that role playing has brought to you. Again, we talked about this before of creative thinking. And I'm pretty sure, Mike, that you have used critical thinking, creative thinking in your work in everyday life, that you've applied D&D principles to real life. Because we do it as role players because of all the imagination and stuff that we're using. So can you think of something in everyday life that you consider a D&D thing that you bring into real life?
Oh, I would say, like, from my trade, because I'm an electrician, like looking at what the situation you have and the problem that you need to solve, and the tools that you have at hand to solve that problem. Because it's not any different than looking at an encounter with a monster or whatever, and looking at your player sheet and be like, okay, this is what I have to solve this problem. How am I going to get this to fix that? It's really not any different.
So what are your influences for your D&D campaign? Authors, movies, music, what is guiding you? Because I had mentioned that Hellraiser was a huge thing for me. I started its own like mythos with Hellraiser. It really influenced me. What's yours?
When I got back into it, my wife was listening to podcasts, and she turned me on to Critical Role. So I naturally started listening to that. But for story-based stuff like, Braveheart, The 13th Warrior, oh, good Lord. Stuff like that. I've begun now when I'm planning my campaigns, because I have to contest with somebody that has their doctorate in creative writing. I started looking at like the hero's journey and that sort of stuff to educate myself a little bit more on how to correctly, line these things up more in a way that's more entertaining. Game of Thrones, obviously, Lord of the Rings, like those go without saying. Basically anything. A lot of Skyrim. Harry Potter. I mean, it's a if there was ever a ripoff of a Lich, it would be
Voldemort.
Right,
first.
Right. Yeah. What's a Horcrux? It's a phylactery.
Yeah.
JK stole that in the biggest way, in a great way. So actually, I like to, because a lot of my players, like you were saying, Alex, a lot of them come from different points of view. Like I have one player that he's a rogue. He really likes getting that final kill, that knife in the chest of the Night King. Like he loves that finishing move. He loves it. Noelle loves, like, she's about yay tall in real life, but she plays a dragonborn paladin who just recently did 110 points worth of damage in a single swing. So she loves being that like heavy hitter, just run in there and beat the crap out of them. Krista likes playing wizard because she's a Harry Potter fan. She made a halfling wizard that's like super powerful. So so drawing from those, like seeing where people are coming from, like my buddy Matt's a rogue. He likes playing a lot of thief. Krista likes playing a little Harry Potter, so she's definitely got a wand. Seeing Noelle watch like 13th Warrior, swing a giant sword like some sort of barbarian. It's kind of like draw from all sorts of different places to write their story arcs.
Right.
To keep it entertaining for them.
Do you reward your players for like creativity and stuff like that? Is that a factor, or is it like you're very like by the rules in terms of reward based things? Like, because you'd mentioned that you would roll the dice to give sort of magic items. Do you have other like bonus rules that are like Twig style that you do?
Twig style rules?
Like house rules. What do you use for house rules? What do you do that's different from the regular rules? What do you take from, you say you started with 2nd edition, now you do 5th. What have you maintained from old rules that you've kept from earlier editions you liked? What things have you like made up yourself? What have you changed? That sort of thing. We also have 2 electricians here, so is there anything you guys do different with dealing with electrical attacks in gaming because of your insight?
That's awesome.
That other people would not, because I could get into a big thing about this, but I'm interested to see is, how you get the players that have a certain knowledge of something and they want to tell you how things work because they know better. But when you know better, what do you do with the game to make electricity function better in your game than a non-electric person would?
We just recently got into that where they came across some pirates that had a wand of lightning bolt. and a couple of our players wear metal
Wand
armor.
of lightning bolts or wand of lightning?
Wand of lightning.
Okay.
So, rare, pretty powerful item. Some pirates had it. Weird story arc. But a few of our players have full plate mail armor. And in the book, it says they would take more damage. My education shows me that they would take less damage because they're basically in a Faraday cage, grounded to a wet ship. It'd be bad and unpleasant, but it wouldn't be as bad as somebody just wearing wet leather armor. That's not how 5e writes it. I played it as the rules wrote it, but I was like, no, this doesn't make any sense at all.
So if rules guy's coming at you with rules say this, and you're going, I'm the DM and I know that electricity works this way, how do you resolve that cognitive dissonance?
Usually I'll be like, okay, either I'll half it, and I'll be like, I'll meet you halfway in some way, or I'll say, we'll go with rules as written now, but be aware next time you're in a Faraday cage.
Right.
That's the way it's going to be in my mind, because this Wizards of the Coast was out of their rocker. Obviously, there's no electricians there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe there should be.
Electricity's always like that, though, in movies and everything. So.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. It's just like the guy that's like, oh, yeah, I shocked myself. I stuck a fork in a light socket once. And you're like, that's not how that works.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a question. You've got your back turned. You're level 10 fighter. And you turn around and you see 3 dragons in front of you. You see a red dragon, you see a blue dragon, and you see a black dragon. Of those 3, which of the breath weapons would you least like to take?
Ooh.
And I'm assuming that 5th edition is the same as AD&D, which was fire, acid, and electricity.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and say the red, because the red's classically the toughest dragon. They're all horrible breath weapons, so I feel like the red dragon's going to do the most damage. Yeah. I'm thinking. I think black, it's between the black. Like, you could negotiate with the blue dragon because they're kind of on the fence of being evil. You could probably sell your body to them for slavery or something and live through the encounter. But black, super duper evil.
Yeah.
Red, are we looking it up?
Yeah.
No, I'm looking up something that was from first edition.
Breath weapon?
These things are so hard to... Well, actually, one of the differences between the editions. So in newfangled D&D, people are worried about the damage and what stuff does to it. But some of the most scary monsters in D&D are things like rust monsters, disenchanters, stuff like that, because they go after people's items. So people still have a sense of those things, because it's like, okay, this thing's going to do X amount of damage to me, but I'll bet you they're a lot more scared of that rust monster or disenchanter because their items don't heal. Now, in first edition D&D, not only did you have to, not everyone used this rule, of course, because it's hard to find in that bloody Dungeon Master's Guide, but items had to make saving throws, and different items, depending what they were made of, had different types of saving throws versus different types of attacks. Lightning would be destroy certain types of things, fire, cold, different stuff like that. Like a potion, cold could be bad against a potion, might not do anything to leather. Fire, of course, is going to fuck up your scrolls. So depending on which character might have a different point of view of which dragon, right? If you're magic user with your spell book and your scrolls, that fire is going to be a pain in the ass, right? Then you get all these different things like that. So that's what I was thinking about. Is it's interesting, not just for the amount of damage that it does, but the type of damage and what you actually have, and you don't get healing bursts or whatever it is called. What do they call those things? Where you heal really quickly now? Long rests and short rests and all that.
Short rests. There's short rests and long rests. And you take a short rest that is an hour. Jeez, I'm questioning myself now. As an hour, you have a certain amount of hit dice you can roll, and you get those hit points back. It's 5th edition is the very skewed in the way of the players being survivable. which is the argument for the CR rating of monsters. You know, when you design an encounter, they have like a
balance encounters.
Yeah. So I've made for the last like 2 years, I've made every encounter above deadly for them, because otherwise there's no point.
It's not enough. Right.
Yeah.
And
Well, especially when you've got like, you know, 5 or 6 30-year-olds sitting in a room and they've been thinking about this encounter all week. They are on point. They know exactly what they are doing. They Googled, you know, they know they're going to fight a green dragon. You know, they've Googled it and they've looked at it. Even if they tell you they haven't, they know they have, because they want to know what they're coming up against. So
it's weird now, because I mean, obviously the age of your troop, that plays a big role into what's going on. But Gary Gygax was playing when he was 30. He had a campaign of like 7 or 8 people, and the youngest in there was like 11. And then it's weird, a different time, of course, but in his basement, he had a big sandbox that they would put the miniatures in. So who you play with it's a big difference. And now with the age of the internet, you're totally right. Like, they're researching the shit out of stuff before they hit the gaming table. So
because they research things and people know what monsters do and stuff, do you make up some of your own monsters to get past player knowledge of things to be able to get that unknown?
Absolutely. I don't think I've played a monster verbatim from the monster manual in quite some time.
Good.
Because it's out there. Like, even in the new game I'm playing with a bunch of my Burning Man friends, one of them went out and bought the campaign book for Wildmount. She's like, oh yeah, I got this and I read most of it last night. And I was like, oh boy, okay, well that makes it a little bit more difficult for me. She's like, am I not allowed to do that? I was like, well, it's just a setting. It's not like it's every dungeon laid out. But yeah, I because you can just type in a question, you know, what's a green dragon 5e, and instantly Reddit has got a dozen conversations about it and how to fight it. You have to customize your monsters. I don't think there's any way around it. You could play it that way and just hope that your players don't look, but I like to keep them on their toes.
It's like interesting, but you have to do that now because of that kind of knowledge. Whereas in the beginning days, nobody knew what anything did because everything was new. It's very different.
It's kind of funny because, like, with 5e and then the new edition of Dungeons and Dragons being so approachable, you have a significant amount of people that didn't play it. So they like the idea of like a beholder. They have no idea what a beholder does. So I'm like, in my main group, I know there's one or two of them that probably have a good idea of what a beholder can do and to be worried of it, but the rest of them have no idea. So when I drop that down in a dungeon, I'm super excited. Like classic stuff like an owlbear.
Right.
I threw one of those down on the table, and the halfling paladin was like, "Oh, that's so adorable." Carry you to bits.
Yeah.
So cute.
Bite your face off, man.
Yeah. What's old is new again, and that's the
So I mean, I remember that Jason was telling me too, because it's funny that you talk about that, because Jason used to play online back in the day, and I couldn't believe that he did Dungeons and Dragons this way. But how did you used to play, Jason?
So we did the high-tech version. It was called play by email. So it was super lightning fast. Instead of play by mail, you could do play by email. And if you got it in on the weekend there, you could get several different back and forths in between things. But it was really good for the things where you could go back and forth with the players. You could have in-depth conversations with one player and another, and then you'd have the group thing. So you got a lot of different stuff like that was going, okay, you see this, your perceptions of this situation are this, yours or that. You know, you can do a lot of different work where instead of giving one description to everybody, you could give the general description everybody gets, and oh, this person notices this person notices this based on their background, and then they behave in different ways. It was kind of interesting that way. But I don't know if you do it now because that's just what you could do. This was
everything's in real time
back then.
right?
This is when you used to download and your graphics would go just to do a picture, right? So this was like when modems still made that squeaking sound. So
okay, Twig, we're gonna throw some trivia at you. We're gonna test your knowledge and see where you are in your deep knowledge. Okay.
Bring it on.
Okay. Oh, sweet. This would be great. So Jason and I are gonna play a little game with you. So first of all, before Advanced D&D, what was the previous set to Advanced D&D? What was it called?
Like the original game written by Gary Gygax?
Yeah.
Chainmail.
What does Chainmail look like? Do you know?
It's I believe it's like a wargaming. It's more of like a almost Warhammer 40K type thing, is the way it was described by me.
So it's kind of
a little bit more board game.
Yeah, miniatures. I wish we had a copy of that. That'd be so awesome.
Oh, it'd be invaluable. Yeah, was it Chainmail? Did I get that right?
You mean the original right there?
Holy mother of God. You got to open up a museum. That's amazing.
So
I got a couple things.
So Chainmail's there, but also show the other 3 books there, Jay.
The sorry, I was looking at monsters.
This is so crazy.
So you got the original.
Oh wow!
Oh, sorry.
There they are.
The camera is so.
Are those the original printings?
Well, I don't know if they're
It doesn't even
printings.
matter.
I'd have to look, but no, they're original. They're
that is crazy.
I don't know if it even says which printing. I'd have to look it up on the thing to see if it's like.
And they don't have like.
But they are the originals. They're not the copies. They're the real ones with all the stains and all that stuff.
So Jason, and they're not. Show Twig the novelty box sets.
Oh yeah. So these little box sets here. So this is fucking camera. This is my stand.
Yeah.
This is a box set. So, Ari, you had the rule book, right?
Yeah, I got the originals.
So, yeah. So it's got the books inside. Fucking camera. I can't use a mirror. Yeah. I never use a mirror.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So there's the little books, and not only do they have the little books, but they've you've got the so the covers come like old modules used to be like this, where the cover would come off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd have the map on the inside of the cover. So it's actually got that. Got the Keep on the Borderlands there, most famous module ever. Oh, you're speaking about owlbears. I already did this earlier today.
I don't know.
There's the owlbear.
Yeah, that's awesome.
On my shitty 2009 webcam. But yeah, you can actually read it. The text, if your eyes are good enough, that's actually the whole thing is right.
That's
right in there.
Okay,
so that's
Twig, next question. Other than Gary Gygax, who's considered the father of Dungeons and Dragons? What was his name? He was his partner.
Yeah, it was his partner that I don't think followed him to TSR.
He had a falling out with him. His name?
Dave.
Yep.
Something with an A.
Yeah,
I can't remember. Arneston? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, trivia number 3. You're doing pretty good. What was Gary Gygax's campaign called? His fantasy world? Jason's going to help you. Don't show it yet.
I was going to show a different one than you thought I was going to show.
Did he run? Was it originally Greyhawk? It wasn't originally Greyhawk.
It was.
It was originally Greyhawk.
Was it originally Greyhawk?
Things, the Greyhawk supplement has some of the rules in there, and then the World of Greyhawk. There's a box set version. There was an earlier version, the folio, but that's in the other room.
Cool. Okay,
I watched a video on him talking about it, and he based it on Earth. Essentially, Greyhawk was like the D&D version of Earth.
So and he had the Great Lakes and stuff with the.
And it was all like European medieval combat, and
Hey, Jason, I want you to throw us some trivia at Twig.
Okay.
Not too obscure. Let's see where he's at.
Well, I'm going to see. You started with 2nd edition D&D. So
I had a big
weapon,
gap in there.
Okay. Weapon versus armor type modifiers. Do you know what those are, and did you ever use them?
Be more specific. What do you mean?
I remember there being a rule about like if you were wearing plate mail and scale mail, whether not like the equivalent of like slashing and piercing damage, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, so there's different types of slashing, piercing, bludgeoning.
Yeah.
The damage would do different versus different types of things. Yes.
Yeah, if
That's
you
one of
were
the things
using a bow against like plate mail, it would do more damage than if you were using like a broadsword against plate mail.
So they had it was different adjustments for the hits and stuff rather than the damage, but same idea because it's D&D logic, just like you're harder to hit and stuff. That's one of the things people don't use a lot of. When you use 2nd edition, there was casting times were a big thing in 1st edition. 2nd edition they used a little bit less of that. But do you know about spell casting times? Was that a thing that you used?
I don't think we ever did. Because we were really young, and it was always we were playing in the junior high library, so we're trying to keep it like going real quick. So you could cast teleportation circle in an instant just so we could keep things moving. Okay.
So for the monsters, which monster book did you have for 2nd edition that you guys used?
I think it was AD&D that we used. I think it was my copy of AD&D, the first monster manual, not the added on supplement.
So was it a book or was it in some other?
Say that again?
Was it in a book or was it in a different format that was not a book?
I'm pretty sure it was a hardcover book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because earlier in 2nd edition, they actually had them.
Yeah, that's the second one.
Yeah.
2nd edition, they were actually in a binder when they first started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they had them in a binder with hole punched pages, and they went in. The actual official one was like that, and then later they compiled them into the monstrous manual rather than the monster manual, and that was the one. So I was trying to date where you were within 2nd edition there.
Yeah, I think I was like 12 or 13. And I had my parents actually kept my set of AD&D books until like 4 months before I started playing 5th edition. And my mom
and then they got rid of them.
My mom, she called me and she's like, do you want to hold on to these? We're getting rid of stuff. We're going to downsize the house. We're going to move in it. And I was like, I'm never going to play that again. Don't worry about it.
Oh,
she's like, okay, I'll give them to the book sale downtown in the ice rink downtown by Savon. And I was like, yeah. And then I called her back like after I started listening to Critical Role and was like contemplating playing a game again. I was like, you still got those books, right? And she's like, no, you told me to get rid of them. I was like, what do you do? I didn't know. I didn't know there was a renaissance happening. I was not aware.
We've all made mistakes. We've all let a Black Lotus or two slip through our fingers. It happens, you know.
Just heartbreaking.
Stop.
They were.
I don't want to talk about it.
There's a story behind that. I can feel it.
Yeah, there is. I lost it. I lost my Black Lotus when we used to play for Ante.
Oh,
that's a true story.
Whenever you played Magic, you used to take, what was it? The top card would be the ante card. So that was like your bet card.
Yeah.
And if you lost, then the person got that card from your deck.
Correct.
That's dangerous because there's the 5, right? That
Power
are
9.
Like,
there's 9.
Yeah, 9. That aren't even allowed in regular competition play ever.
We play with that.
Oh yeah, there's some.
Yeah.
Well, we don't do the ante cards because there's no ante. So,
and I still have.
Again, it's like the Christian craze against D&D. There was the anti-gambling thing, and that's why they had to take ante out of Magic, right? So people interfering with games people that don't even play the games interfering with games.
It's fun listening to to people that like in the artist community, like the guy that does The Late Show, and Joe Manganiello.
Yep.
Them talk about how they.
Oh, is he the guy that has a wine cave?
Yes.
One is that
Yeah.
the guy?
Is
Joe
the Gary Gygax Memorial
Memorial,
Dungeon in Hollywood, and it's his basement, and he has like WWE wrestlers and the guy that started the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise and a bunch of famous writers that come and play with them, and they talk about exactly, and they talk about this craze coming back and how they're getting back to the game and talking about how their parents freaked out about them having books. It's interesting.
That's very funny. Yeah.
Yeah. It's Joe Manganiello. I can't even pronounce his last name. He has his company's called Death Saves. I follow him on Instagram. It's pretty cool. But they have some neat people. I mean, Vin Diesel's a massive Dungeons and Dragons guy.
Is he?
Yeah.
Joe Manganiello says that he, like, Vin Diesel says he plays, but Joe's like, I don't know anybody who plays with him.
There's pictures on the internet of him playing.
Is there?
Yeah, I just looked them up. So I know he plays. The Big Show plays. Stephen Colbert used to play. Anderson Cooper used to play. So it's crazy who used to play. But one of the things I want to leave off with here is I'm going to ask all three of you, when you're talking about dice, everyone has a favorite die. What is your favorite die in the polyhedral, the group that came in the classic set? What would your favorite die be? So Alex, I'm going to start with you. What is it?
Oh, it's like a D20. Like, is that even a question? How is that? How can you not have the? What?
That's because like, see where I'm going with this. Okay, D20 for you. How about you, Jason?
D all.
D all?
Yeah, I've got a dice that has all the dice all on one dice.
What?
What does that mean? Oh, here we go.
Witchcraft.
I'll be back in a minute.
This is witchcraft.
Okay,
dice.
How about you?
I mean, naturally, you would say the D20. That one seems like a bit of a cop-out.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say the D4.
Ooh, Caltrop.
Yeah, the worst.
Because you get a player, and you're playing at home. Everybody's got pizza and beer and stuff. Somebody's like, whoa. I dropped my D4. And everybody's walking around the living room like it's a goddamn minefield. Because it hurts more than a Lego, and you know the point is going straight up. So
Totally.
changes the scenario. I'm like, okay, well, it's somebody's turn. They're like, no, we gotta find the D4.
I'm horrible. My memory sucks. It's actually called a D total. So I don't know if we can fucking camera. I hate
go the
cameras. Okay.
That's it. Wait, up higher, a little higher. Yeah. What?
Okay, so it has different dice on it. So you roll it, and then on the side it has several different dice. You can tell by the shape which dice you're rolling. Okay. So just with this one dice, you pick the thing on the side. You can kind of see, like, obviously the triangle is a D4. So you just roll the dice, and you get.
So no matter.
I was thinking in the terms of, like, if you could only have one dice, you're on a desert island. You're only allowed to use one dice, and you have to run your whole game using one dice. This is one. So very obscure. Game Science, one of the best dice companies ever. Colonel Lou Zocchi, legend in the gaming world.
Awesome. Yeah, everyone's got one. I really like the D10 because it harkens me back to my Vampire days when they did the D10 system, which I thought was really clean and awesome. Obviously, the D20 is classic. And, that's the thing. So when you roll a 1, what is it called for you?
Critical fail.
Critical fail. How about you, Jason? Is it a critical fail?
Just a fail, and you've got a critical, and then you've got a fail. Somehow it became a critical.
Embarrassing.
Fail, I guess.
Yeah, we used to call it. Well, it was botching a roll. That was it. So what's a 20?
Right. Yeah.
When we used to do it, 20 was we just say, oh, you got a double damage. We always said to a double damage when you got a 20 because that was
double damage. Yeah.
School, right. But I mean, what do they call 20s now when you get a 20?
Critical
hit.
Yeah. Always. Yeah. Since video games have like made the critical, like, And it's interesting because Dungeons and Dragons set up a lot of the video games, and then a lot of the video games sort of influenced the play of like modern day Dungeons and Dragons, because it had to keep up with certain scenarios and like the way that you would go through a dungeon, where you'd find chests, how that sort of, they play off each other a little bit. I think it's like a sort of a symbiotic relationship, as not only because the dungeon master is going to be influenced by the media that he's subjecting himself to at the time, which like now video games are primarily how people interact with RPGs. Is more people have probably played an RPG than they have Dungeons and Dragons. Right. And most people who play Dungeons and Dragons have played an RPG. So like for me personally, video games were the start, and then Dungeons and Dragons, which is opposite from probably how you guys interacted with it, which was Dungeons and Dragons, and then video games came out from that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we covered a lot of topics today. I mean, this is actually going to be, I'm going to make this a second episode, it's of second edition of our D&D episode. I want to thank Michael Twigg for joining us. It was good to meet you. It was kind of cool to get another perspective. So, and I'm super happy that there's people playing and they're out there. So hopefully maybe we can have Twig on again, because you're a good guy to talk to, my friend.
Absolutely.
Hey, I enjoyed talking to you guys. That was great.
Awesome.
Yeah, great.
So this was the TORVUS podcast. This was episode 2 of our Dungeons and Dragons episode. And remember the contest that we have out, the Hero Forge contest. So you want to get in on that. So take care. Until next time, keep on geeking on.